This morning we will study about what actually happened in the conquest of Jericho. When Israelites came out of Egypt and they traveled 40 years, and when they came to, they were about to enter Canaan, they crossed River Jordan. The first place they were supposed to occupy was Jericho. Now, to set the background, if you have heard people saying that Canaan is heaven, it is not. From Egypt, when the Israelites came out and they came to Canaan, it is not going from, Egypt is compared to the world, no doubt, but when they came to Canaan, it is not heaven. Reason: in Canaan, Israelites had enemies. They had to fight. They had to occupy. They had to defeat the enemies. When you go to heaven, you have nothing like that. So, what is Canaan? Canaan is a life of victory. A life of victory. What did Jesus say? You must be overcomers. So, from the worldly situation as unbelievers, as dead in our sins and trespasses, what did Jesus do? He raised us to life. He raised us to life, and then He brought us into a life. Did He take us away from this world? No, we are still here in this earth. So here on this earth, God expects us to live a life of victory. Victorious living is what Canaan is all about. In Deuteronomy, there is a verse that says, days of heaven. In the King James, it says it differently, but in NIV, it says something different. Let me read that for you. In Deuteronomy chapter 11, verse 21, so that your days and the days of your children may be many in the land that the Lord swore to give your forefathers, as many as the days that the heavens are above the earth. That the days of as many days as heavens are above the earth is what one translation says. But if you go back and try to look into King James, let me read this verse, another translation, not the King James, I guess. Let me read this translation for you. Deuteronomy 11 and 21. That says, yes, in King James it says, that your days may be multiplied, and the days of your children in the land which the Lord sware unto your fathers to give them, as the days of heaven upon the earth. So the kind of life that you are expected to live is, the kind of joy that you have in heaven, that's the joy you're supposed to have in the land that God is going to give. But it is not that this land is heaven. Canaan is not heaven. Because the first enemy that the Israelites found that they had to defeat was Jericho. Now, the falling of the walls of Jericho is a very strange phenomenon. You know the story. What happened was God told them to go around the walls 6 days, once a day. On the seventh day, He said, go around the walls 7 times. 6 times, you need to be very quiet. So all the first 6 days, when you go around the wall once, you have to be quiet, very quiet. But 7th day, 6 times when you go around, it has to be quiet. But the 7th round that you make around the wall, what you need to do is, you need to make a big cry. You have to be the loudest, you need to make a big shout, and that is when the walls will fall. Now, what God did here in this case is, look at Joshua chapter 6 and verse 1. Joshua 6:1. Now Jericho was tightly shut up because of the Israelites. No one went out and no one came in. I don't know if you have thought about this verse. Jericho was shut up because of the Israelites. Jericho was tightly shut up because of the Israelites. Why? Why was it shut up? Because of the Israelites. You know, the actual act was the falling of the walls of Jericho. But it would be unfair for us to understand this if we do not go into the background why the gates were shut up. Why was Jericho shut up even before they did anything? Look at verse 2. Then the Lord said to Joshua, "See, I have delivered Jericho into your hands along with its kings and its fighting men." Now the question is, geographically, where are the Israelites? They're still outside the walls. So therefore what you see here is God has already decided the outcome of this attack. Now when God has already decided the outcome of this attack, what does it mean? What does it mean? God is in all this. The most important thing that God tried to help the Israelites in all their journeys was that He was dealing with the hearts. Whether it is the hearts of the Israelites or the hearts of the enemies. Let me show you one verse. Deuteronomy chapter 8 and verse 2. Deuteronomy chapter 8 and verse 2. Remember how the Lord your God led you all the way in the desert these 40 years. Technically, would it take them 40 years to travel? No, it's not 40 years at all. Why did the journey take 40 years? Why did it take 40 years? You know the reason? The reason is this. In Numbers chapter 12, Numbers chapter 13, they came to a place called Kadesh Barnea. That was the border of Canaan. That's the border of Canaan. This is Egypt, this is Canaan, and they came all the way, they came to Kadesh Barnea. And they had to take one step. If they take one step, they are into Canaan. But you know what they did? They doubted God. They said, I don't know if He will take us inside. We don't know what kind of people are there inside. Will we be able to defeat them? They forgot what God did for them all these years. Nearly approximately 2 years, how God defeated the enemies. They forgot everything. So what God did was, He brought them down all the way. And then they stayed at one place for nearly 37 and a half, close to 38 years. And then they went around the east. Now this is Egypt, this is Canaan, okay? This is Egypt, this is Canaan. The easiest way for them to is enter through the west, right? The shortest route. You know what happened there? Instead of going through the west route, they had to travel all the way in the wilderness, go back and forth, and then they had to come from the east. The reason it took them 40 years is because when they were at Kadesh Barnea, they sent spies into Canaan. And in Canaan, these spies were there, you know how many days? 40 days. Because they were there for 40 days, look at Numbers chapter 14 and verse 34. Numbers 14 and 34. For 40 years, 1 year for each of the 40 days you explored the land, you will suffer for your sins and know that what it is like to have me against you. So the reason why they were in the wilderness for 40 years is because they explored the land for 40 days. So what God did was, He took them around in the wilderness 40 days. In the wilderness, during these 40 years, what was He doing with them? Deuteronomy 8 and 2. Remember how the Lord your God led you all the way in the desert these 40 years to humble you and test you in order to know what was in your heart. In order to test to see what was in your heart, whether or not you would keep His commands. So God was interested in dealing with the hearts of the people. It's the same thing even today. Even today what God wants to know is what is running in your heart. Why do you think Jesus came into this world? Why did He die on the cross? Did He die for your money? Did He die for your car, your house? What did He die for? Did He die for your fame, popularity? No. He owns the universe. What else can you give to Him? Why do you think He died on the cross? You know why? He just wants to have your heart. He wants you to love Him with all your heart. Deuteronomy chapter 6 and verse 4. The Lord said, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. This is what He said. O hear, O Israel, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength. Though the Israelites did not do this, did not fulfill this, you know what God did? He still was on their behalf. It was God's love because of which He was on their behalf. So when they came to Jericho, He told them something very interesting. He said, you will defeat these guys. The king and the warriors all will be your subjects. You will defeat the people of Jericho. But I want you to do something. You know what? Don't touch the gold and silver. Don't touch Joshua chapter 6. Joshua chapter 6 and verse 19. All the silver and gold and the articles of bronze and iron are sacred to the Lord and must go into His treasury. They are what? Sacred to the Lord. What is the meaning of sacred to the Lord? In book of Leviticus, we studied this so many times, talking about the offerings. It's what? Holy unto the Lord. When it says holy unto the Lord, it means it is dedicated to God. It's not yours. You have to give it to God. With the wave offering that the priest does, it is holy unto the Lord. It goes to the Lord. So, you have to give it to God. So, what God did was, He asked them to dedicate this gold and silver to Him. Now, think about this carefully. In the book of Joshua, nowhere did God give this command again to dedicate the gold and silver to Him. It was only the first battle. It's the first battle that is in with Jericho that He said, the gold and silver has to come to me. They fought against so many people, right? You find book of Joshua is a book of victory. There's so many attacks, so many defeats you find. In all this, God never said, okay, I want you to dedicate this to me. He said, all the spoil from now onwards is yours. What God was trying to do was, He was trying to test the Israelites when He was fighting for them. What we don't understand is when we think what God is trying to fight for us, we think everything is okay. But please remember that while God is fighting the battles for us, He wants to know what's in your heart. In 1 Corinthians, there is a parallel to this. Now, First Corinthians, you know what happened? These people, they all went through the 1 Corinthians chapter 10. What did they do? They all went through this Red Sea. They all ate the spiritual manna. Chapter 10 verse 2. They were all baptized into Moses in the cloud and in the sea. They all ate the same spiritual food and drank the same spiritual drink, for they drank from the spiritual rock that accompanied them, and that rock was Christ. You see, God gave them so much of provision. Their clothes did not tear, and their sandals did not wear out for 40 years. And then Hebrews chapter 3, and then you find this something interesting. I'll read this and then throw a converse, and you will try to understand. Chapter 3 verse 16. Who were they who heard and rebelled? Were they not all those Moses led out of Egypt? And with whom was He angry for 40 years? Was it not with those who sinned, whose bodies fell in the desert? And to whom did God swear that they would not enter His rest, if not to those who disobeyed? See, you find this contrast in 1 Corinthians 10 and Hebrews 3. In 1 Corinthians 10, you see God provided them the food, He gave them the drink. And in Hebrews 3, you find these people were disobedient to God. Now the question is, while they were still disobedient and God was trying to work out their way, He still provided everything for them. He provided them food. He provided them drink. So when we have things from God, we think, oh yeah, that is all. God is with us. God is giving us. God is blessing us. Please remember, the righteous and the wicked, they all have the same sun and the rain. So we have to go a step further to understand, am I really pleasing God? Am I really pleasing God? We usually say the test that the test of pleasing God is external material things. God helped these people to bring down Jericho walls, but he was trying to test to see what was there in their heart. He put a test. It's only one test. Don't touch the gold and silver. Give it to me. God always wanted the firstborn, the first fruits unto himself. When he redeemed the people of Egypt, he said, the firstborn are mine. When he gave the Son, Jesus, to the world, he is his firstborn. Only Son, of course. After resurrection, he became the firstborn. He said, give me my first fruits, give me my firstborn. This is what God said. And he did it, and he's asking you what? The Israelites, don't touch the gold and silver. And even that, they disobeyed. Before we go further, let's go back as to how God helped these people despite their disobedience. The first thing that you must remember is, when they came to Jericho, Joshua sent the spies again. This time it's not 12. This time it is only, how many? 2. When they came to the west side of Canaan, when came to Kadesh Barnea in Numbers 13, they sent 12 spies, one from each tribe. They showed their disobedience and lack of faith. They forgot what God did all these years for them. They thought, no, we need to analyze, we need to use our human wisdom. We need to use our human wisdom. Many times this is what we do. We forget what God has done for us up to that point and suddenly change our thinking to our human wisdom. Look at the wise men. Wise men. What do you think they did? They did exactly what these Israelites did. They traveled from the east all the way to the city of Jerusalem. Now the question is, the people who traveled all the way from the city of, from the east all the way to Bethlehem, and when they came all the way to that point, why do you think they forgot that that star could lead them up to the point where Jesus was, the baby Jesus was? What happens is, that's a human nature. When they were in the desert, when they were walking in the east, from the east, they walk in the desert, they walk in at night. Because you find the stars only at night. You have to follow the star. So when the stars are there, you keep following the star. When there's nobody around, then you say, yeah, I'll depend on God. When you see people around, you think, I can forget God. I don't need God there. They came to the city and they abandoned the star. These people came up to the border and then said, oh really, can we go inside? No, they started reasoning. They forgot how he split the Red Sea. They forgot how he gave them the food. They forgot how God gave them manna. He's giving them manna every day. God is making every provision to the people, but the human nature is, once you reach a point, you want to change your stand. Did God abandon those people? No. He continued helping them. The 2 spies were sent not to see whether they can defeat or not, to just gauge the enemy. Just gauge the enemy. So these 2 spies, and see who did these spies go to? These spies went to a prostitute. They went to Rahab. They went to Rahab. Maybe a good move, because she keeps getting people. She's a prostitute, so probably that was a good idea from human point of view. But what did this Rahab do? I want you to listen to what Rahab did. What did she talk? She hid them, and the people got to know that there are some people hiding here. So what did she do? She hid them, and then when they came and said, where are the 2 people who came here? She showed them the other direction. Said, oh yeah, they went there. So she misled them. They all went. She came to these people on the roof. Chapter 2, verse 8. This is what she spoke to them. Before the spies lay down for the night, she went up on the roof and said to them, I know that the Lord has given this land to you, and that a great fear of you has fallen on us, so that all who live in this country are melting in fear because of you. My dear brothers and sisters, even before you go around the walls of Jericho, you know what God has done? He's already attacked the hearts of the enemies. They are melting in fear. Why are they melting in fear? Is it just out of the blue? No. Verse 10, we have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea for you when you came out of Egypt. See? When did this happen? 40 years ago. This instance happened 40 years ago. What God did for these people 40 years ago has created a fear in these hearts of these people. My goodness, they're coming, man. They're coming. Now, and what you did to Sihon and Og, the two kings of Amorites east of Jordan, and whom you completely destroyed. What Israelites asked was, we won't drink any water, we won't touch any of your property, just let us walk through your land. And these two kings said, no, we will not let you. So they had to fight. What happened? The Israelites won. And please remember, the Israelites are not warriors. They've been slaves for nearly so many hundreds of years. And now God helped these slaves to defeat the army of two different countries. So when you defeated two countries, think about this, when you defeated two countries and you are just a year away from the neighboring country, don't you think they'll be scared? You'll be scared. Even before they did anything, God fought for them. And if you frankly talk about how Jericho came to be won by the Israelites, the Israelites did not do much. What happened? God already put the fear in the hearts of the people. He put the fear in the hearts of the people already. Rahab says, we are melting with fear. And she says, I know you will win. I know you will win. And in that situation, she says, help me. I know you're going to defeat this country. Help me, please. You know what they did? They said, yeah, but there's a contract, there's an agreement we need to make. What is that? You need to hang a scarlet rope from your window, and that'll tell us that this is your house. And when we come and attack, we'll rescue you. We'll rescue you. You know what happened? In Joshua chapter 5. Verse 1. Now when all the Amorite kings of west of Jordan and all the Canaanite kings along the coast heard how the Lord had dried up the Jordan before the Israelites until we had crossed over, their hearts melted and they no longer had the courage to face the Israelites. Now, Rahab was talking about drying the Red Sea. Now, in Joshua chapter 3, what did God do? He parted the river Jordan. He parted the river Jordan. So when you see God is trying to help these people, He dries up, splits the sea for them, helps them defeat the big enemies, helps them split the river, walk through. And when all these things are happening, I'm sure any country would be in a grip of fear. And then these people said, oh, we are all gripped with fear. What God wanted them to do was, Joshua chapter 5 has a wonderful part. What they did was, before they attacked, listen to this carefully, before they attacked Jericho, God said, circumcise all the males. You know why? Because all these males are the ones who were born on the other side of the Red Sea. They were not in Egypt. They were born after the Red Sea split. So these people were not circumcised. What is the meaning of circumcision? The meaning of circumcision? Let me show you this. Joshua chapter 5 verse 8 and 9. And after the whole nation had been circumcised, they remained where they were in the camp until they were healed. Then the Lord said to Joshua, today I have rolled away the reproach of Egypt from you. So this place shall be called Gilgal to this day. What happened was they circumcised all the men there. The meaning of the word circumcision is to cut off the flesh. A believer needs to cut off the flesh in his life. What does this flesh do? This is not flesh. This is not the flesh that Bible is talking about here. The nature of sinfulness, the nature of sinful man, that is what the flesh we are talking about. You need to cut it off. The symbolism there was that you need to cut it off, and then you go and attack a place. What did what does the Bible say? Resist the devil and he will flee from you. Is it yes or no? Yeah? James chapter 4. Let's look at that. We all know this very popular verse. James chapter 4 and verse 7. When you read it carefully, it is something different, because we start with somewhere from the middle. We say what? Resist the devil and he will flee from you. No, that's wrong. That's not what Bible says. There's another sentence before resist the devil. That is what? Submit yourselves then to God and then resist the devil. See the order? First you submit to God and then resist the devil. That's the way of a spiritual attack. That's the way you fight your spiritual battle. You know, when some people brought people with different ailments, somebody who had was possessed with the devil, evil spirits, the disciples couldn't heal this man. So they brought him to Jesus, and he did that. And they were surprised and said, how did you do that? What did he say? This thing comes by prayer and fasting. So when you surrender yourself to God and then you go for the attack, that's when God gives you the victory. So here what they had to do was, they had to circumcise, and then Joshua was ready. He thought, now I'm ready to go and fight the battle. So that's when suddenly somebody showed up. A man with the drawn sword. He showed up. And then he's a commander, so he said, hey, on whose side are you? Are you on our side or our enemy's side? What is the answer there? Verse 14, Joshua 5:14. Neither, he replied, but as commander of the army of the Lord, I have now come. I have come as a commander of the Lord's army. You know what? Look at the timing that God sent this commander. The timing at which God sent this man was that they are now about to go and attack. They are about to go and attack. And before they go and attack, the Lord sends the commander and says, hey, go to Joshua. Joshua was thinking, I can do this on my own. But God said, no. You're not going to do this on your own. How do you know that? When he said, I'm the commander of the Lord's army, what was Joshua's response? 5:14. Then Joshua fell face down to the ground in reverence and asked him, what message does the Lord have for his servant? The commander of the Lord's army replied, take off your sandals, for the place where you're standing is holy. And Joshua did so. You remember another man had the same experience? Who was that? Moses. Take off your sandals, because the place where he's standing is holy. Why did he have to take the sandals off? Why did he have to take the sandals off? The answer is this. The answer is this. It's not because you traveled somewhere here and then walked here and there with your sandals. It's because when you wear your sandals, you are a little above the ground. When you take your sandals off, you as a dust, made of dust, you identify yourself with the dust. And there is a commander who's from the Lord's army, commander of the Lord's army, and then you as a commander of all the people of Israel also identify yourself with the dust and say, sir, you may lead. I'll follow you. I'm not a commander. I'm just dust. That's the meaning where this commander was telling Joshua to take his sandals off. Then what do you see in chapter 6? In chapter 6, you find they employed the method that was told them. Go around 6 days. 7th day, go around 7 times. 6 times silent. 7th time, make shout. What happened? The walls collapsed. Can any military strategist tell me how it is possible that going around a wall for 13 times in a week can bring the walls down? I would like to ask the world's greatest military strategist how this is possible. You know what? It's a God thing. It's a God thing. Now, in the whole story of how they attacked Jericho, what was their role? What was the role of the Israelites? What was the role of Israelites? You know what the role of Israelites was in this whole story? If you carefully think about this, they only had to obey God. They only had to obey God. They had to obey God, number one. They had to fight against the enemy. And number three, they had to cut off the flesh. You see that? These three principles. Number one, they had to obey God. When the Red Sea parted, they had to just obey God. And was it easy for them to obey God at that point in time? No, not easy at all. Because they are being chased by the enemy. The enemy is right behind you. It's not easy. But they obeyed. Now, even if tell me something. How many of you, when you go to an aquarium, you know, the huge aquariums that you find, are you not really, have you not heard people say, what if this glass breaks? What will happen now? Right? Even with such kind of technology that we have, people are scared and say, oh my goodness, if this glass breaks, man, we are in trouble. We know how much technology we have today. Those days, when the Red Sea split, you needed faith to walk through the dry ground. When you'd be looking at the water and say, what if this falls, man? Right? You had to simply obey. Use your faith, obey. When there were enemies, you had to fight those enemies. And the most important thing was you had to just cut off flesh. If you really study closely how they came to win Jericho, they had to just obey, fight the enemy, and cut off the flesh. God gave them victory. Same thing true in our lives. He will bring the right thing at the right time. He brought the commander to Joshua at the right time. What a joy it is. Our God brings the right person at the right time. He did the same thing to Abraham. He was about to Lot was captured. And he had defeated the enemies. And that's when, who came? The priest, high priest. What's his name? Melchizedek. Melchizedek came to him. Genesis 14:17 says, after Abram returned from defeating the Kedorlaomer and the kings allied with him, the king of Sodom came out to meet him in the valley of Shaveh, that is a king's valley. And there the king of Sodom is about to come and see him. Next verse says, then Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought him bread and wine. King of Salem, Melchizedek came. When the king of Sodom is about to come, what is king of Sodom going to do to Abraham? Offer him riches. Offer him riches. And say what? Hey man, thank you. When you saved us, I want to show you gratitude. But when the king of Sodom came, what was Abraham's reply? I will not even take a shoe, latch it. I will not even take a thong of a shoe, sandal. Why? Why did he come to that conclusion? You know why? Because when the king of Salem came, this is what he said. Blessed be Abram by God Most High, creator of heaven and earth, and blessed be the God Most High, who delivered your enemies into your hand. What a statement that is. Abraham was thinking, I defeated the enemies, the kings with 318 trained servants from my house. Oh yeah, I'm a successful man. I won this battle. But what did God say? Abraham, you didn't win it. I gave you the victory. I gave you the victory. And when king of Salem came, Melchizedek came, his eyes opened up. And then he gave him a tithe. You see? What did he do? He gave him a tithe. And then this man said what? When king of Sodom came, I won't take nothing from you. I won't take nothing from you. I don't want you to say one day that you made me rich. Time will come, I'll be a rich man. I don't want you to say, yeah, I gave him so that guy became rich. Abraham said, I don't want it. Look at the timing. Look at the timing when God brought king of Melchizedek. Amazing. Before they went for the battle to Jericho, the Lord sent the commander and said, go and see Joshua and tell him he needs to take his sandals off. And you lead the army. And that's how they won the city of Jericho. What is city of Jericho? Impossible situations. A city full of walls. Things that look impossible to us. But you know what God does to us? Though there may be big walls around us, but because of what God is doing in our lives, the city will be shut because the hearts of the people are melting in fear. When you can only see the walls, is it not? You can't see the hearts. But what God can do for you is He can break the hearts of the people, defeat the resolve of the enemies, and then the walls will just collapse on its own. God will do things for us. Therefore, you must remember what God did for the children of Israel. What God did was He gave them the victory, but what the Israelites had to do was three things. Number one, obedience. Number two, fight the enemies. Number three, cut out the flesh. Maybe in our spiritual life, in our generation, in our life, do these things. And so impossible things like the walls of Jericho just will collapse. Let's pray.